Now to one of the persistent realities that we are facing in the nation today, and that is homelessness. Gabrielle is going to join us next from Settled. So, if you're like me, you have seen a growing number of younger and younger people on the corners near where you live holding cardboard signs. They appear to be fully capable people, and yet they are unsettled. They are homeless and they are disconnected in terms of the way our communities ordinarily function. Gabrielle Clowdus is joining us. She's the founder of Settled. And we want to talk today about what it means to be settled and how we can engage with those who are currently unsettled in our communities. Gabrielle, welcome to the Reconnect.
Carmen, thanks for having me.
So, what does it mean to be settled? And then tell us a little bit about those who are currently unsettled in our communities.
Yeah, I think we look at someone on the street and we often have a response that they're there because of substance abuse or mental illness or lack of affordable housing. But after a decade of studying chronic homelessness in America, I can tell you that those are just symptoms of a much deeper root. And when you start to peel back the stories of our neighbors that are stuck in homelessness, our neighbors that are in chronic homelessness, you will find stories of extreme neglect and abuse and violence from childhood, which leads to adulthoods of feeling unloved, unwanted, and really pushed to the furthest fringes of society. And so our neighbors have experienced a profound and catastrophic loss of family. And if we don't respond to that root cause, if we don't respond to this profound loss of family and community, then they will never be homeful. They will continue to cycle in and out of emergency rooms and detox centers and jails and emergency shelters. And we just continue to keep people on the fringes. But what if the church were to see them as brother and sister, as kin, and invite them in as family? Our reality would look really different.
So I would love for you to tell us the story of one place, one church where this has happened. Maybe tell us about the Prince of Peace Church or some other church. Like, I do think that it helps people to hear a story of how it happened in one place.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Prince of Peace is a progressive Lutheran church in Roseville. It is on 8 acres on a beautiful piece of property overlooking the lake in that area. They were allowing people that are sleeping in their cars to be in their parking lot, passing through. The Roseville police found someone in a city park and said, "Hey, this woman is living in her bus. Can she stay in your parking lot for a bit?" And they said, yes, absolutely. And then it was starting to become winter and they got connected with Settled. We help churches plant what we call sacred settlements. So, an intentional and permanent tiny home community on their land and in their building. And so, we just began conversations with the church, and a series of small yeses looked like the church saying, we're an older congregation, we're a declining congregation. We don't know what it would look like to say yes to something permanent. But the question really is, God calling us to do this? Is he calling us to care for our neighbor the way that we would want to be cared for? And the answer was yes. The answer was, we don't want to see our neighbor sleeping in an uninsulated bus all winter long. Like, we want to put her in a home. And so we planted 3 homes there. 2 homes are filled with people coming out of chronic homelessness on the streets for more than a decade before moving in, before having a permanent place to be known, seen, loved, wanted. And then one of those homes is filled with what we call an intentional neighbor. It's a family, a husband and wife and a child, that feel called and compelled to live life alongside the poor. They are really there almost like backyard missionaries, not there to proselytize, not there to fix people, but just to live their life together, to invite people into family games and meals and walks and gatherings, essentially to augment that role of family. And then you have the worshiping community around the sacred settlement to augment that role of community so that we're connecting people with the body of Christ. We're connecting people with just a rich social network and fabric. And the beautiful thing, Carmen, is that this not only helps our neighbors coming off the streets have those family ties in their life, but it also sanctifies the church. This church that had been on the decline for 30 years is now seeing, after 3 years of having their sacred settlement there, an increase in engagement, in attendance, in tithing, in membership. They're seeing young people come into the church for the first time in 30 years because people are seeing the warmth and light of a church that is actually caring for their neighbor in a deep and authentic way. And we see that this is the hope of the church. This is the work of the church and has always been the work of the church to care for the poor the way that we would want to be cared for.
It's eye-opening, first of all, just to simply acknowledge that if we were to look around and to do so maybe with less judgmental eyes and more with what has God placed under our stewardship? Look at the land that we have. Look at even the asset of the parking lot. I'm not sure that churches maybe have considered their parking lots assets in this way, ministry, useful for ministry in this way. So even just that, just beginning to see things differently. What do you see? Who do you see? How do you see those that you see? And how do you see what God has placed under your stewardship? Do you see your parking lot? Do you see that empty acre? Do you see that as something that God has placed under your stewardship? And are you, first of all, willing to allow God to use it like in a way that you have not thought of using it before? The parking lot is not just a place where people come and go to park to attend things at the church. Like it could be that your parking lot is meant to be something else. I just even just getting people thinking differently and seeing differently and talking differently and imagining is so life-giving, particularly for congregations that have been focused increasingly on wringing their hands about who is not there and what they don't have and how things used to be and what is the terminal date for our congregation in terms of its expression in this community. I just think that this is a way to really change the conversation that's happening in local churches, but also to obviously address a very significant, persistent need among our neighbors. Gabrielle, let's continue this conversation in just a moment. Now that you guys are interested in knowing more and checking it out, the website is settled.org, and we're going to continue this conversation with Gabrielle Clowdus here from Settled in just a moment. You're listening to The Reconnect. Do you have a homeless encampment near where you live, maybe off the exit at your interstate? Do you know people who are standing on street corners where you live near stop signs? Have you wondered where they go at the end of the day or at the end of their quote unquote shift on that corner? Yeah, I have. And I know the answers to some of those questions, but I also don't really know how to get my local church fully engaged in what we're talking about today. So I'm relying on resources at settled.org to get the conversation going where I live. Maybe you could do so as well. Gabrielle Clowdus is here with us today. She's the founder of Settled. Gabrielle, talk with us about like, how does this work? Who can do it? Where do we begin? I don't even know what question I should start with.
I love it. Yeah. You start with the question that's burning on your heart. I think each of us either see homelessness regularly in our commutes or in our lives, or we read about it in the paper. And I think it starts with a question of being more curious, of saying, I might have some knee-jerk reactions to homelessness. I might have some stereotypes around it, and really searching our hearts and saying, God, could you give me a real truth in this space? I think often people go to one of two camps. They either say, there's something must be wrong with this person. They either chose to be here or they did something terribly wrong to deserve this. Or another camp is there's the government and this is the government's job and government should step in. And being a little bit more curious as people of faith and bringing this to the Lord and saying, how do you see this? We know from the Psalms that God has a solution to homelessness. He says that he places the lonely in families. We are that family. We're the family of God. We're the bride of Christ. We have room in our hearts, at our tables, in our churches, on our land to invite our brothers and sisters home and to make that home together. And it will strengthen all of us, and it does strengthen all of us. This can be done anywhere by any congregation that has a heart for radical hospitality. We're so grateful that the first three sacred settlements in Minnesota look really different. We've got, I talked to you about Prince of Peace Lutheran, this suburban, progressive, older congregation. We have a sacred settlement at a small urban church that's a conservative Nazarene congregation, pretty diverse and young families, just on about an acre of land just outside of downtown. We're also planting a sacred settlement in a third ring suburb in an affluent area at a mega church on 30 acres. So it really has nothing to do with theology, politics, economics. It has everything to do with the heart of the church. And if the
Yeah, that
church says yes,
Yeah, see, that's
then
really good. So I think that when you say it doesn't have anything to do with theology, I might say it has everything to do with theology. But what you're pointing to is it doesn't have anything to do with the points of theology that tend to divide us denominationally or even congregationally, but it has everything to do with the theology of the dignity of the human person, with the reality that every person's created in the image of God, with the never give up spirit of Jesus. Like he
mm,
goes and he seeks people out. I'm thinking about the way that Jesus restores the dignity of people that he encounters at every turn, and how in our culture today, it is very evident that there are people living beneath where they should be living in terms of the dignity of a human person. And it is about theology in that way. And I just thank you for the wide open way that you engage and encourage every Christian of every variety to press into this. We all have land. Our churches are sitting on unused land or un eh, less than its maximum use. So when you jump into conversations about this, my guess is there are some people who immediately want to throw up all kinds of barriers to this happening, quote unquote, on their church property. Talk with us a little bit about the process, like to maybe internally or externally, just a little bit about the process of how this works.
yeah, the process just begins with let's say some lay people in the church are like, this is amazing. It's bringing a few of our videos to their leadership and starting to ask them to watch them, to pray about it. We have videos that are 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and just starting the conversation there and saying, leadership, will you watch this? Will you pray about this? Can we see as a congregation if this might be something that we're being called into? And then we walk churches through a discernment process. Every church, every local church is already on mission. They already have a mission statement, a vision. How would a sacred settlement enrich that mission? How would it help them do what they're already called to be doing in a deeper way? We believe a sacred settlement does that. It helps a church live more fully who they want to be. And through that discernment process, then there's some sort of kind of vote by the leadership or by the congregation saying, yes, we affirm this calling. And then we move into a planning stage where we put together an operational framework based on our model. We have 5 key elements of our model. And then once that's in place, we move into a build stage, which is really exciting. It's the whole community participating. Multiple churches can help one church plant a sacred settlement by sponsoring and building one tiny home to lift one person up off the streets and plant it at that sacred settlement. And then finally, we move into the steward stage, which is kind of ongoing until Jesus comes back. It's how do we faithfully walk through life together and just continue to build deeper and deeper, enduring relationship with one another. And the church becomes more of are called to be as we walk with the poor in this way.
Be careful because this might catch fire. I hope you are so busy that you have to like expand exponentially. I hope this absolutely digs into people's hearts. And I love what you're doing and I love the way that you're doing it. You guys should check it out. Settled.org, guiding the local church to cultivate home in a homeless world. They believe God has an answer to homelessness, that God places the lonely in families. Settled exists to help churches invite their neighbors off the streets and into full community through intentional tiny home villages called sacred settlements. I know you want to know more. I know you want to be praying with and for those who are already engaged, and I know you want to engage as well. So we want to connect you at settled.org. Gabrielle, thank you so much for being with us today on the Reconnect.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Doesn't that just inspire you? Doesn't that thrill your heart?